But first, the U.S. trade deficit soaring to a decade high of $621 billion last year, with the goods trade deficit with China hitting a record of roughly $419 billion. This coming as President Trump is reportedly pushing for trade negotiators to cut a deal with China soon in the hopes of fueling a market rally ahead of his election campaign and the rest of 2020. Guys, what are your thoughts on this? Because it's obviously been such a big point of emphasis for the president.
This is all about his 2020 re-election campaign. President Trump knows that the economy is his trump card, and he wants to make sure that it's strong. That's why he's complaining about the dollar being too strong. He's still complaining also about the Fed raising rates, although they've paused that. And when it comes to the trade war that he started, he's now wanting it to end quickly so that we can get a huge market rally. So that's what he's all about.
Yeah, and Sheree, I mean, when we talk about trade, it's kind of one of those issues that I guess a lot of people don't really know too much about. I mean, it's not necessarily something that people are, if you're not markets focused, paying attention to day to day, as opposed to some of the other measurements of the economy that people might look at.
Well, I think now, because we have so many more small business owners, and specifically it's Women's History Month, a record number of women who are starting their own businesses, who are actually sourcing themselves independently from China, they're paying attention in a way that we might not have been as focused. So it's definitely something I think a lot of entrepreneurs and people who are a little bit more savvy are thinking about.
Got it. No, for sure. And I mean, Sabeel, we've talked about it too. It's specifically the trade deficit with China was something that when he was running for president in 2016, that was one of his points, was that we need to close this gap.
Yeah, so it looks like it's a massive fail. And we've got this top trade negotiator, Lighthizer, who's doing all this work to try to get a deal that's not just something that's just, empty on paper, but that actually has measurable consequences if China does not abide by the rules. But yet the president seems to not care anymore. Just get it done quickly because I've got a re-election campaign coming up.
Yeah, and the fact that it's widening is one other thing that I think, shows that things might be moving in the wrong direction, especially as, if that is the case, then you would think that it would drag even more so on Q1 moving forward as we look at, GDP numbers and everything else. Obviously, you don't want to have that dragging down the economy.
Yeah, no, a $621 billion trade deficit on his watch. There's
Trump's
nobody
watch.
else he could really blame, although he is pointing the finger in other directions at the Fed and all that, but it really is on his watch.
And the strong dollar, as you mentioned as well, something else that he has brought attention to. But for more on this, we're joined by Yahoo Finance's Rick Newman to help break things down. Rick, we already talked about how President Trump has often talked about this issue before he was president. Now that he is, does it stop with him?
Well, politically it does, and of course, whoever ends up running against him is probably going to say, this guy, this is one of his top unfulfilled campaign promises. That's if this persists. But I think three things are going on here. You talked about the strong dollar. That certainly is part of it because a strong dollar makes American exports more expensive to people buying them overseas, which just means they're going to buy less of it. And it also means imports coming to the United States are cheaper, which means we're going to buy more of it. And that part is not Trump's fault. One other thing that's going on here, also not Trump's fault, is that the U.S. economy is just doing better than many other economies. So we're still buying stuff from overseas, but people overseas are buying fewer American exports simply because those economies are slowing. Also not Trump's fault. The part of this that I think is Trump's fault is the tariffs and his trade war. So he put tariffs on these a lot of imports, and those countries put retaliatory tariffs on U.S. exports.
Sure.
And that has added to the problem because it's made U.S. exports more expensive. So a big part of the story in the trade deficit, the widening trade deficit, is we're just exporting less. That actually brings down GDP growth. That probably contributed to weaker GDP growth in the fourth quarter, and economists are saying it's going to do the same thing, perhaps even more so in the first quarter of this year, which we're in right now.
And I mean, we talked about it, Sheree, you touched on it too. I mean, it's consumers, when we talk about the tariffs, it's consumers here in this country that will be paying the effects of that.
Yep. Are paying, not will be, are paying. Americans are paying about $3 billion per month.
We covered that yesterday.
Yep.
I should say you covered that yesterday. But in terms of, I mean, we talk about how that might pay out if he actually gets a trade deal done. That wouldn't be money that's just lost in vain. That would be something that substantive change was paid for by having these.
Right. So when Trump has something to say about this, probably what he's going to say is, look, this is a work in progress, and I'm asking people to bear with me here. I put those tariffs in place in 2018 because I'm trying to get a better deal for the next 10 or 20 years. That might be true if he actually gets a better deal. It looks like what he's likely to get is a relatively modest set of concessions from China. But if the Chinese were smart, and they are smart. What they would do is they would do what they can to actually narrow the U.S. trade deficit with China in 2019 and 2020, even if it just make it a little bit smaller than it was the year before. So instead of increases for 3 years in a row, which is what we've seen under Trump so far, give Trump something he can point to and say, therefore I did it. And keep him off your back. I mean, really, if you're China, you just want to give Trump enough to keep him off your back for the next 2 years.
Yep.
And then hope either if he gets reelected, he sort of drops it because he doesn't have to deal with it anymore, or he doesn't get reelected and somebody else comes in who doesn't care that much.
And it looks like that's what China is offering, that olive
Yeah.
branch. We'll buy U.S. products to get this deal done and end this trade war. And also a big segment of Trump's base has been affected by this trade war. You're talking about farmers in Iowa, soybean farmers. I mean, they've been struggling, and the government has been giving them aid, millions of dollars in aid, but that still doesn't replace all the sales that they would have had if there had not been a trade war.
And as we've mentioned multiple times on this show, President Donald Trump facing re-election 2020, President Xi Jinping on the other side.
No
not.
election.
He got rid of those
Is
term
not.
limits.
So he doesn't have that deadline looming over him.
He's
All
playing
right,
the long
Rick
game.
Newman, thanks so much
Thanks,
for
guys.
joining us. Appreciate it.